Hello, everybody. Welcome to another exciting episode of Jimmy's Jambox. We're here. We're back at it again, and we're going to get on into it. But before we do, as always, please make sure to like, subscribe, push all the buttons, do all the things. You know, I don't know where they are, but you do, and I trust you. With that being said, here's a quick word from our sponsors. Organic herbs and botanicals, skincare and edibles, wellness for body and mind. The Brothers Apothecary. Fine teas and remedies. Ronald Records. From indie gems to classic hits, discover the heart of local music. With live shows all the time, up close and personal, and regular releases on their in-house label. Ronald Records. Supporting the community, one track at a time. All right, thank you all so much for watching. Again, shout out The Brothers Apothecary and Ronald Records. Make sure to click the link below and go check them out. Guarantee you're going to like them. And with that being said, let's go ahead and get on into it. Here is today's guest.
Hello, my name is Mike Gamble.
Hello. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, why don't you tell us a little bit about, who you are, where you're from, what you do, give us that Tinder profile of your involvement with music.
Okay. I've never done any online dating before, so I feel like I know what a Tinder profile is from the outside. My name is Mike Gamble, and I am a guitarist mostly. I'm also an educator, and I run a nonprofit called the Creative Music Guild as well.
Hell yeah. Well, definitely excited to talk to you about that in a little bit. But let's go ahead and go right back to the beginning. What got you started in music initially?
Initially, I would say inspired by my folks, which is my dad and my mom, and sort of their interest in music. My mom was a pianist, and my dad was a clarinetist and a vocalist until he got kicked out of his Catholic choir for having a terrible voice. Not professional musicians by any means, but, kind of just folk style and oldies. My dad always just listened to the oldies.
Okay.
Growing up in Philly, we used to drive to Philly from the various places that we used to live, and always would drop on the oldies station. So sort of early memories of music was driving around and listening to that, and of course 80s jams that were coming on.
Yeah.
And I could name a million of those.
Yeah, no, definitely.
Yeah.
Well, it's cool that they at least had an understanding of music in their time. And then when you first got into it, did you mainly did you start on guitar, or was there something else?
I did actually. My mom, being a pianist, wanted me to play piano, wanted me to study piano, and classic sort of kid thing. I did not want to study the piano. And my uncle, who plays guitar and sings songs, he recommended for me to start guitar. So I got guitar probably around fourth grade or so.
Okay. Well, shout out to cool uncles voting for guitar instead of piano.
I want to be a cool uncle.
Same. And then I guess from there, did you find other instruments, or have you just always been mainly guitar?
I found some other instruments. Yeah, I played piano sort of loosely, not really taking lessons and kind of doing it by ear. And then by the time I really dove into guitar, I had a good friend who played bass, and I'd always borrow his bass. And then when my band started, the drummer would leave his drum set in the basement, so I would get into that.
Yep.
And of course, from there, I went to high school and prior to that, middle school, obviously, and I played trumpet, and then I played tuba.
Oh, okay.
And I had the classic moment, where I had to decide in the middle of Ohio, do you want to be a marching band, or do you want to be tight end in this crazy football team? And I decided to go with the sousaphone. So I played sousaphone and marching band.
Gotcha.
And string bass as well as cello too.
Okay.
Yeah, classic band nerd.
Yeah, very much so. But hey, you've got a pretty well-rounded experience of the sounds within music,
Sure.
and pretty early on too. So that's cool.
Yeah,
to go
definitely.
About it. Now, before we get into more of you in the present day, we have a couple foundation questions we check in with everybody.
Okay.
And this first one is one we ask early. It's one we ask often, and it's definitely a crowd favorite. What was the first album you ever bought with your own money?
Ooh, that's a great question because I have a very vivid memory of cutting some grass and my dad giving me, I don't know, like $20 or something.
Oh, damn.
And which at that point, was a lot of money.
I mean, that's a good amount of money for cutting grass.
It was.
I guess dependent upon how large your yard was.
Yeah, it was a pretty big yard for what it was worth in the middle of Ohio. But that being said, I went and I remember I was way into InXS. So I bought InXS kit.
Okay.
And simultaneously, I think there were like some used tapes, and I bought Young MC, Stone Cold Ryman, and I bought Mama Said Knock You Out.
Oh, damn.
Cool J. So it was like a triple flip.
Yeah.
In a way.
Hey, I mean, those are all solid options.
Very solid.
Hell yeah. No, I dig that.
Yeah.
And then what was the first live show you ever went to? That was like one specifically you wanted to go to. So like you saw it was happening, got tickets, went to it.
Interesting enough, I don't remember this, but my parents took me to go see Aretha Franklin in the Boston, not the Commons, but whatever is like close to the river. I kind of forget. And I don't remember that, but I feel like I've felt it ever since. But the first actual ticket that I remember, just begging my dad to like let me go to this concert was definitely the Metallica Black Album tour.
Okay. Damn. That was probably a cool one.
Oh yeah. No, it was definitely cool. And definitely, the first time I smelled cannabis and the first time I heard that level of decibels through my ear and my craniums.
I'm pretty sure Metallica holds the record for loudest concert somewhere.
Yeah.
Like Google that. Somebody Google that, put it in the comments.
Definitely, it was like right around the, Red Hot Chili Peppers, like Loudness War, all that stuff. Yeah. And they probably did that on the live stage too.
Damn, yeah, I could believe it. Hell yeah. Well, that's an awesome first gig. Or like
it was good.
One that you wanted to go to.
It was a good one.
Hell yeah. And then before we get into more of you in the present day, do you have a defining moment where you decided you wanted to take music more seriously?
Yeah, I have two, if that's okay to describe two. One of them was, I'm a left-handed person. And my first guitar teacher just flipped it over, and eventually, since the only thing that really taught me that was cool was Wipeout, which is sort of cool as a guitarist, I guess more or less a drummer, but I ended up quitting and then being a classic kid in the woods doing terrible things, as you would imagine, in the middle of Ohio, kind of like Stranger Things vibes. I ended up picking up a guitar and studying with this guy who ended up showing me Led Zeppelin's Stairway to Heaven. So I have this vivid memory of completely playing the wrong chord at the end of Stairway to Heaven in 5th grade. And it ended up being like the coolest chord in the world to me, which was like an A minor 9 chord because I forgot the 2 top strings. Kind of like the same chord at the beginning, but without the 2 top strings being open. So I played that chord unknowingly in the middle of this church in Ohio, and that turned into be a moment where I was like, I'm a performer, but I'm also going to be reaching something that I don't know about.
Yeah.
And that was the first moment. That was the first one. The second one was definitely when I was in middle school, and this is like right post grunge era and right into like me getting into nerdy virtuistic guitarists like Joe Satriani and whatnot. And I was asked to play this like high school thing, 8th grade, and ended up coming up with like this bluesy arrangement of a lot of Christmas songs. And it was at this huge venue in Columbus. And I remember just hearing the crowd and hearing everybody get way into that because, right afterwards was like, Tchaikovsky's Nutcracker Suite and this or that. And then, of course, hearing something that was remotely off kilter was kind of the moment where I was like, well, I could do something like this.
Wow, that's awesome. And that your first one was such a like specific moment, but like as you were saying, I was like, oh, I get it.
Yeah.
And I imagine that's probably what like secretly led into the more like experimental approaches you take now.
Yeah.
You were like, wait, things can be different.
Yes.
And that's exciting. That's really cool. Thank you for sharing
not
that.
playing just on the page.
Yeah. Yeah. Wait, just on the page?
Yeah, as in sheet music. Yeah, not Jimmy, but hey, I'm to the double entendres all over the place. Yeah, it's
I get one dumb joke a week and I'm getting it out early.
You have to.
But now let's go ahead and let's get on into you in the present day. And I ask everybody this question, but I feel like it's going to be a very easy one for you.
Sure.
How'd you pick the name?
As in my own name, Mike Campbell. I didn't, because it is actually my name. And funny enough, I feel like a lot of people might think it's a stage name, considering that my last name is a verb.
Yes.
And it's also kind of like a bunch of different things all at once. But full disclosure, I'm not related to Procter and Gamble. And also, I wish I was related to Gamble and Huff, but I'm not.
Fair.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I could see how this. There was a gentleman who was on the show a while back named Julian Outlaw.
Ooh.
That's his real last name. Like, I don't think he changed it to that. It's like, that was his birth last name.
Dang.
Yeah.
I feel like when Frank Ocean and like, I don't know, all those sort of like names that I didn't know they were real or are they real?
Yeah.
Like, you know,
I guess Frank Ocean was Frank Ocean's real name.
Is it?
Oh, I thought you were saying it because it was.
Oh, I have no idea.
I don't know.
So.
Everybody put that in the comments too. Let's figure out if it's real or not.
It's definitely a comment moment.
Yeah. Oh yeah. But no, that makes perfect sense. And now let's go ahead and we're going to talk about your writing style.
Okay.
And again, you know, your music is very experimental, very expansive. When it comes to getting a track started, how do you go about it?
It depends in the context. Like if I'm writing for one of my bands, which is a longstanding band that I have on the East Coast called the In-Betweens, or a band that writes music that improvises as well on the West Coast called Twans. I oftentimes take inspiration from like a new chord that I'm looking at, or a new chord progression that I'm looking at, or just some like melody that I'm singing around that comes to the writing table, be it through like a voice memo of me just driving to a gig and scatting or whatever I'm doing. Sometimes that's that, and sometimes it really does come from like a sort of like a current thing that I'm reading, whether it's politically charged or whether it's like philosophically charged, or something that's based on meditational practices, and finding something like David Lynch says, catching the big fish. So there's that side of things. And there's also sort of like a way of serialization that I use, which is like sort of influenced by a number of different things. Definitely a bunch of Afrofuturists, and also by the Second Viennese School in Vienna with Arnold Schoenberg and Alvin Berg and a bunch of those heads that were kind of coming up with a new way to compose. And I've sort of expanded the quote unquote 12-tone row to what I think is more of a true to the world, the overtone series, and basically a bigger foundation or bigger, like as if MIDI, like it does, like it's 0 to 127 with so many things, like it's expanded to bigger things like Open Sound Control did. And this one I've been uses the alphabet plus a couple extra notes to create what I think the true triad is, which is an octave and then an actual third on top of that.
Wow.
2 octaves and an actual third on top of that.
Wow. That is extensive.
It's a little extensive. Yeah.
But I imagine it leaves a lot of room for opportunity, which is really exciting.
Yeah, it does. And it's really fun too. Like I've been doing this project where I've been sort of taking that approach and using people's names and where they're from and where they were born, and like some other sort of catchphrase that, I know them for, or pop culture knows them for. And then I'll write some fun jam where I like, use all these crazy chords, or I'll do it with rhythm instead, or dynamics. and sort of relate it to the actual coordinates of where they were born and turn that into frequency, and then micro-tune the guitar. I don't know. Depends on what mood and how much time I have.
Yeah, very much.
Then I'll give it to somebody. Be like, here's the actual chart. It looks crazy, and and here's the actual track. And they're like, really? And then some people are like, well, that's great. It actually feels like and sounds like what I would imagine it would be.
Man, that's incredible. That's so cool.
Yeah.
And then I guess, do you perform a lot of your own music individually, or do you mainly? Okay.
Yeah, like tonight, for example, I'm playing a solo show, and I'll merge in via a bunch of improvisations and loop sort of based music, some current songs I'm working on, or maybe some songs that I've written with my partner, who's also a songwriter and filmmaker. Devin Fabriello is her name. We were in a band for 10 plus years called Sequel that hasn't disbanded, I should say, but hasn't really worked on the West Coast. Our last tour was right before we moved to the Pacific Northwest. So
Gotcha.
we're thinking about getting it back together.
Well, that's exciting. Is that how you two met?
No, we actually met coincidentally because we both went to school in Boston.
Oh, gotcha.
She was a filmmaker going to Emerson, and I was on scholarship to go to the New England Conservatory of Music. So we met each other through a mutual friend, and have kind of been working with each other artistically ever since we went on our first date.
Okay. That makes sense. Well, that's awesome.
Yeah.
And I guess the reason I was asking if you perform your own stuff is that when it comes to performing your music, how long does it usually take you to get comfortable performing it once you have it written?
That's an awesome question, because it's depending on whatever band it is. Because the bands that I generally have been working with that are using my own music and sort of strongly developing the persona as a band and not like my trio, which has sort of been always a pet peeve of mine, of most jazz graduates will just be like, oh yeah, let's start the blah 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 trio, and I'll hire this teacher and that person that I don't really know too well, but they're great, so they can play my music. I mean, I do that sometimes. I'm sort of like being whatever. I don't know what the particular word would that.
I know what you're trying to say. Yeah,
like a retrograde liar, I guess. But when I do work with a band that I feel really comfortable with, it takes time to memorize the music, because I prefer not to actually look at written music, even if it's really hard. I like to try to internalize it, because once you do internalize a song, regardless if it's like the most simple song or the hardest song, it kind of takes its own form with all the members of the band and how they interpret it, and how you basically will perform it almost a different way, you know?
Yeah.
Like I said with my first lick with playing the wrong chord of Stairway to Heaven, you know, like knowing those things that are, or I should say being open and vulnerable to new things happening with a band, rather than like having the click track in the ear, which I totally respect that all too, but it's just not what I do personally.
No, and I mean, I feel like, especially in your genre, it's probably a little harder to just be able to like go off on a whim.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, just being in the realm of improvisation, and it sounds like it kind of, you have a focus on, sometimes the other members of the band, I imagine, can swing that direction as well.
Oh, absolutely. And the moment itself, and sort of like the triangulation of the audience too, and how that feels too. Reading the room a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, that's really cool. I mean, I can't get over like how like vast your music is. 'Cause, like I was going through it. I try to check out everybody's music before they come on the show. But I'm going to be honest, your catalog is huge. You got music going back to 2015, at least on Spotify. And you got a ton of stuff on Bandcamp as well. I checked out as much as I could.
Okay, cool.
And I mean, it seems to, like I said, exist in a very experimental realm, lots of textures, total use of the soundscape. Like there was no moment in time where there wasn't like something being touched. And it lives in this mixture of like organic, but not like, or I guess like it is organic, but it's also like complex, and it feels like synthesized, but like not like just like synthesizers all the time. It kind of had this sound where it felt like some of the sounds were probably coming from things that it didn't sound like.
Oh yeah, no, definitely. I oftentimes get asked like how I did a track or like how this came up, and sometimes I just completely forget and I get lost in the moment. Like a lot of engineers or a lot of people that are, inspirational for me, painters, filmmakers. There is a sense of form to a lot of what I do, even if it's an improvisation.
Yeah.
Whether it's like the length of the tape that I'm recording on to like the amount of time I have, or the various like restrictions I give myself as an improviser.
Yeah.
But definitely on the soundscape realm, I feel like I'm always searching for new sounds and always sort of maybe buying like a new effect and selling another one, or trying it in a different order, trying to minimalize things and maximize things too. Everything in between.
No, I could believe it. I did notice one thing, and I think this is a fun little fact. You have, over 11 albums, 30 total releases. None of them are single song releases except for your newest track.
Oh, that's
yeah.
That's
you have I'm probably not going to say this right, but One Iron Authorisms.
Yes.
That one, and Prelepsarians.
Yes, Prelepsarians.
Those have 2. But nothing else except for your most recent track has 1.
Yeah.
Prelepsarians, it's 2 18-minute tracks, so it's like in the world of regular math, that's probably like 5 tracks for a regular person.
Yeah.
I thought that was really interesting. You've always dropped bodies of work.
Yeah, I do. And some of those are based on like specific relationships I have. Like that first one that you mentioned is a collaboration with this great multi-instrumentalist and friend, Shahzad Ismaili, who has played with everyone from Mark Rebo to Rage Against the Machine at some point, and also he works with Aruj Aftab, and he works with Mike Gamble in a small little stage in Brooklyn like 2 weeks ago, where he played drums and I played guitar. And that person was really great to work with in the way that specific album came about. I recorded all this stuff on the tape, and he was in a town, and he had his classic Moog with him, and I had like one effects pedal. I went to his Airbnb, brought my device, and just hit record and just let it go. And pretty much, I don't think I edited that at all, because everything that he was doing on the synth was just, I think, golden. So
that's exciting.
And then some other tracks. The most of the stuff that's on Spotify is something when I started my record label, As Is Records, in the middle of the pandemic. I also got this really cool distribution deal with this company in New York that I used on a different record label called Virtual, and they're like an online distribution thing, kind of similar to CD Baby or DistroKid, but they're more of a person that I like email. So I kind of wanted that, and their catalog is great. They work with like Arthur Russell's music and Yoko Ono's music and a bunch of more experimental New York City artists. So I feel like I'm in the right place with that. And weirdly, when uploading certain things, like certain things will turn into singles because they're a part of like an EP or something. So I guess that's why you're asking about certain things or bodies of work versus that. It depends. Like I gave myself a challenge to do every Bandcamp Friday that happened, and I think I missed 2 since it started, but I want to continue to do that as sort of like inspiration to
motivation to keep putting stuff out and like get it done. I mean, that, like I said, you have so much music out there, and it's so exciting.
And it's not just I wanted to say, especially for everyone listening too, it's not under just my name. Like the other bands that I work with, I don't have it necessarily under just my name too, and it's kind of confusing, I guess, to see. But I'm working on when my record label is going to start putting out more physical stuff, do a like consolidated Bandcamp page that that's my record label with all the bands that I'm involved with. So like, for example, I have a great duo with Machado Majiga called Duo. Machado's great. Big shout out to one of the hardest working individuals and most creative individuals in the scene here in Portland. We have one record that's on his record label, and then one that's on mine. And then I have a band called Domino. I should say, oh my gosh, I could reverse that in a second. It's Damino, not Domino. And it's based off of shortening our names in a funny way.
Oh, fun.
Dan Rossi, who's a great drummer, who tours with Haley Hendricks, the great songwriter. Noah Simpson, who's like the top dog, one of the top dog trumpet players and composers in Portland, and myself, and my trio called Twans, which is the great bassist and composer Andrew Jones, and the great drummer Mike Lockwood, who also owns an amazing brewery called Duality. That's one of my favorite. If you are into that stuff, as in beer, I would definitely recommend it. And the other band is the band called The In-Betweens that I mentioned at first, which is with a great trio that I've been together since I graduated college. This great drummer, Connor Elms, who's from Vermont originally, and a great bass player, Noah Jarrett, happens to be the son of the famous pianist Keith Jarrett, and an amazing composer and father too. Happy Father's Day. It is Father's Day.
Oh, yeah. Happy Father's Day.
Yeah.
Oh, man, that's exciting. You work, it sounds like, I mean, first of all, it's cool that you are able to like give credit where it's due for everybody that you work with, but also it's cool that you have like so many projects that you can be involved in. It sounds like,
no, totally.
Very much the lifestyle.
It keeps me alive in a lot of ways to kind of like go in between different groups and focus on different groups. Like another group too, I was going to mention, is called the Sound Creation Trio, and we started like a couple years ago. Andrew Jones also plays in that band, and one of your Vancouver mates, Matt Mayhall, a great drummer, plays in the band as well. It's honestly been kind of a struggle in a way to get a band together and to keep a band together. As everyone knows, it's sort of like preaching to the choir. But I do feel like after pandemic-ish, like people's interest in actually the idea of getting together and working on things and being in the same room comfortably is more important than it ever has.
No, very much so. That's why I don't do these remote. I'm like, no, it's got to be a conversation with a person face to face.
Yeah, if I would never have to do a Zoom conversation again, I would be a happy person.
I'm in the same boat. I don't even like to FaceTime people if I can avoid it. I'll talk on the phone, but I don't want to look at you through a screen.
I hear that.
Yeah. But before we move into the next one, I do this bit where I pick out a track that I enjoyed.
I love it.
Talk about and again, you have so much stuff, but I did go with the only one that you have released as a single. And thank you for saying the name ahead of time so that I know how to say it correctly, because I was going to ask. But Tuo.
Yes.
Again, featuring Machado Majiga. And I mean, I listened to the whole thing.
Oh, cool.
And it like, I'm going to read off my notes here because I kind of typed it up as I was going. And it was an incredible instrumental journey. It's a half hour long. It's all done in one take. And it was just a sonic whirlwind of guitars and drums. And it all seemed to kind of exist in the same space, which really added this texture and gave the track this like big glued together feeling. But the whole experience lives just on the edge of like where like overwhelming meets exhilarating. And it had these rises and these falls and these moments that like just kind of like lull that brought you back. But there was never a moment where I could guess what was going to happen next. And it was really engaging. It was a really cool, especially because, like a lot of people on the show, they're definitely like rap and hip hop artists. They're like people in bands who follow their formats and structures. So to like hear something that just kind of like, it just breathes in its own space, and to know that it was all one instance, it was really refreshing. It was a really cool experience.
I appreciate that. Those are very kind words. And I will say that particular recording, it was done in the studio that I've started to rent and be a part of called Color Therapy, which is this person, Arjun Miranda, and Ryan Oxford, who started the studio like 7 years-ish ago at this point. And I've been paying rent there and bringing my amplifiers there and learning how to record in a different way. than I have before, as in knowing the room better and knowing microphones or this or that. And that whole session was so great because that particular track that you're mentioning is a one sort of longstanding track. And what happened was we recorded that, and we've been improvising with each other in various ensembles. Like I'll play a lot of Machado's music, or I'll play a lot of music that he brings in from his colleagues and also people that he's never met that he really digs. Machado has done probably one of the coolest things I think you could do as a quote unquote jazz musician is he started an online Google Drive of like all these charts and music from not only his crew and his own circle, but like musicians that he's respected a lot and sort of found charts. And so it's like there's this whole thing about the Real Book at Berklee School of Music, and he kind of did Machado's Real Book. Yeah. So that being said, we've played in so many different contexts with each other, but really when it comes down to us sort of having a band sound and having this sort of like effervescent flow happening at all times, it was really special, I think, for that particular recording session. And we're going to continue to do recordings in that sort of respect. And then also we are going to try to do more chopped up recordings as well, which is the album that he put out on his record label is that same session, but he kind of consolidated tracks in a different way, as if it was like, starts and more clear starts and ends.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Well, I'm super excited to hear what happens from that, because that's really cool. I mean, he spoke very highly of you, so I'm glad we're able to get you on the show for that respect.
Yeah.
But I guess now, and actually you kind of touched on this, so this next question kind of focuses on your process, just like as a whole.
Sure.
Now, you've been doing music for a while. You've been you are involved in a lot of things, but just in the last year or two, has your process changed at all? And if so, how has it changed?
I would say it's changed in a couple ways. Just with sort of the temperature and the climate, I would say like that's going on right now.
Yeah.
I'm feeling the need to make and do music, compose music with a purpose and with like a impetus that is directed towards something more and more. And I feel like I don't know, various groups like that I've played in before, you'll come up with a song and then just like slap a name on it, or like what is even the meaning of calling something?
Yeah.
And I've always sort of been against that, but more so than ever, I've sort of taken the stance of like, okay, I need to compose and write music that speaks to a different sort of audience, and that different audience like has to be somebody who I'd never expect to listen to the music. And like I really have deep respect for fully produced albums and fully produced like pop, hip hop, all that stuff. And coming from a more experimental standpoint, and then trying to make music that's listenable in experimental sort of formation with, like I said, like impetus or like a sort of like direction that you're going for is sort of been my focus of the past few years. More so than ever. It always has been, but it's been amplified because I think, definitely with the influx of more AI and more musicians in general, that I feel like is so beautiful, that there's more and more sort of like a renaissance that's happening due to the influx of all of the digital things, all the streaming things, all the facts that are laying out in front of us, that we can listen to somebody's music that we've never met, that just released it last night in some completely parallel world.
Yeah.
And that is still to this day absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah, I will say, the pandemic did not bring us many things, but the ability to like streamline how we can get music to each other, how we can work on projects independently in our own spaces, and still, I know we commented on hating the Zoom aspect of it all.
Sure.
But like the opportunity to share music was something that was only really starting to become solidified as a concept around that time. Like people were finally like, wait, you can do this, and then that happened. Everybody's like, oh, we have to do this.
Yes. Yeah.
And so in that respect, and especially, look at Gorillaz Song Machines. That is the quintessence. You would have never gotten Blank and Elton John on a track together in the real world, but they were just like, no, just send us stuff and we'll put it together. So
I mean, I am sort of for a lot of concepts of AI, and I'm definitely against a lot of the same concepts in a different, like, I don't know, setting. Like if I'm like around certain people, or I'm, whatever, in some situation where I'm in a bad mood. Yeah, I definitely can get me to a strange place.
Yeah, no, I fully understand.
Especially when money is involved, because let's face it, it's sad how much just taking the entire body and lexicon of research and studies and experimentation and just throwing it into the immediacy that is like point and click.
Yeah.
And it's not cool in a lot of ways. I'm into sampling. I'm into having influences, obviously, but
yeah. Well, the way I look at it, sampling is recycling.
Yes.
Whereas AI is something completely different. But that we could make a whole episode about the thoughts on that, because that is a dense topic, especially in the world of music. But let's not run away too much with that. Let's get back to talking about you.
Sure. I appreciate that.
And before we get into the Creative Music Guild, which we're excited to ask about, let's look at current music as a whole. What are some of the things about either like new music, or at least new to you music, that you've experienced lately that you find like inspiration in?
I find that new music has undergone or under oh geez, my English is terrible. It's been through a lot in the past 20 years, and the digital revolution of sorts has been sort of complex in nature in terms of how we can sort of absorb it as humans, I think. Now I feel like some time has passed, and the idea of mixing genres has sort of like kind of also been at the forefront more and more, like going to concerts where you'll have sort of these wild bills, or even music festivals are like starting to embed more of different styles of music. It's not just going to like Treefort, for example, and just seeing like indie rock bands. Like you'll see quote unquote world music bands, which is my least favorite term. And you'll see more jazz oriented things, and you'll see a nice like assortment of films or this or that. But in general, sort of like in layman's terms, I think the world is wide open at this moment, and it has been wide open, but it's becoming more and more acceptable for the idea of quote unquote a rock star or a pop star to sort of be not necessary. And I like that. I like the fact that a lot of young students of mine, since I teach at Oregon State University on eCampus, and I also teach guitar lessons at Reed College, and talking to a bunch of quote unquote Gen Zers, their interest to sort of like find the most like random, you never hear about these people, and then really get into those people. Yeah. That wasn't really possible without like deep digging in the generation when I was that age. Yeah. I would go to record stores in Columbus, Ohio, like the worst name ever, Used Kids. I'm sorry. I have to laugh because it's the most terrible name, but still is around. Magnolia Thunderpussy was another place. But going to these record stores and like maybe reading College Music Journal and finding some random band that's, not like on every major radio station. Yeah. At a point when it all happened and like MySpace was sharing music, and then Facebook started to share events, and then of course like everybody sold up are paid up for Spotify or paid up for whatever, YouTube, the whole sort of generation. And, Lars is like cringing every moment while it's happening.
Yep. Napster.
I know. That sort of time sort of had its like, extremists who are like, I'm never going to do this.
Yeah.
And people who are like, I might try, to somebody like me who's always like, I feel like since I'm in that sort of cusp generation of Gen X and millennial, I've always been like not completely Gen X, like renegade, like, hard, like it's not like the way it used to be and it has to be this way, to like millennials where I feel like, or just like, just give me whatever new, I'll just check it out. Yeah, sure, I'm going to put it up.
Yeah.
Just boom, 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 let's go. I was kind of on the more contemplative, like, should I do this? And more, I guess I would almost say indecisive nature, but I like finally did LimeWire at one point and dropped Snoop Dogg, Drop It Like It's Hot.
Yep.
And it totally ruined my PC. And I was like, there's a reason why I don't illegally download stuff. And that's proof in the pudding right there.
Fair.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think LimeWire, it was the weirdest double-edged sword because on one hand, we shouldn't have been downloading all that music. That's what it comes down to. That definitely did hurt artists at a certain degree. But on the other side of it, I found out about music, allegedly. I found out about music that I would have never, ever in the history of ever been exposed to.
Oh, yeah.
Like stuff that just like, and I can't even like think of the names offhand anymore, but like, when I was younger, I listened to a lot of electronic music and a lot of like things outside of just the realms of like rock and hip hop. And it was just, sometimes you would just kind of go on there and see what there was under the category of music just to like find anything. So
I mean, similar thing with like with Pandora.
Yeah. And that's exactly where it moved to for me. Once streaming became more of a thing, I jumped on Pandora for a bit, and then I'm an early adopter of Spotify. I think I got it in like 2011.
Yeah.
So like I think like a couple of years after its inception kind of thing. So like I've always kind of been a fan of that as like a way to find it.
I mean, it's a library. And that's really ultimately what it all is. It's a streaming library, and I'm fully down with libraries. And, as we all know, like people should pay and have their due respects to whatever the origination of a book or a movie does come from. And of course, like, as we all know, like, the actual money side of things and the percentage is a little bit out of proportion. Way out of proportion at this moment, and that's sad, and it's tough to deal with in a lot of ways. But being sort of like a centralist in a way, like I understand why streaming needs to continue to happen. Yeah, and I also understand why bands need to sell merch at shows.
Very much so. Yeah. And I think that, and this is all just like massive amounts of speculation, but the pendulum has swung one way for so long. It's got to come back the other way at some point. Like, we are going to see maybe not a total dissolve, but eventually something is going to change. Like like Spotify's either going to fall apart or like have to stop, moguling money in the way that it's doing it, or like something else is finally going to come along. Kind of like how X did when Twitter kind of stumbled for a second. As soon as somebody stumbles and somebody else can see an opportunity, I think that we're going to see some kind of shift in something. But also I feel like live music is finally swinging back where it needs to be. It's still not there. But it's like we are seeing not only an uptick in the existence of live music in a lot of spaces, but we're finally moving towards the desire for even people who before were like, oh, I've got a USB drive, I can go for it, that want bands, that want like people in the room, that want to create music that is a little more on the organic side. And with the addition of electronic instruments becoming more instrument and not just laptop with a button. Like, and not even referring to DJs, but like just moving past controllers per se, we are starting to see kind of, that move into the world of like, yes, these used to only be produced sounds. Now can be performed sounds. That bridge is kind of gapped.
So true. And there's so many really cool spots like in Portland. Like you've got the synth library where you can go learn how to make a monophonic synth. You can learn how to do wild audio reactive uh, uh, performances, like, or how to do that. And that sort of DIY approach is what we're talking about. It's like the organic thing. It's like how David Byrne will talk in his book about music or creation in reverse, how he like talks about how like being in the cave or being in small tribes is like equivalent in a way to you walking around with your iPod.
Yeah.
And, you know, wait, do iPods even exist anymore?
I mean,
you know what I mean? Or your personal playlist. Like, you know, you're curating something just like you would like ask your friends to come over and play a song. Like if you're like, I don't know, in the middle of the country at the turn of the century, you know, and you're making some food. It's like that sort of idea of curational aspect is coming back in this beautiful way, I think. And the need for humans to be in the same room. It's still scary, and you know, the pandemic's definitely still not over in certain ways, and there's always going to be new issues with health and this or that. But music really is the universal language. I'm fully devoted to that.
Very much so.
Yeah.
Very much so. And actually, that feels like a great segue. Let's talk about the Creative Music Guild.
Cool. Yeah.
Yeah. Tell us everything you can, how you got it started,
Sure.
what its mission is, like, just kind of give us a rundown.
The Creative Music Guild, well, it started in, I think, 1991, and it was started by kind of like a collection of musicians and people that loved music that wasn't necessarily traditional or classic jazz. Like, it was improvised music, like music that yes, comes from Black American music, of course, but it is sort of like the groups and sort of the people in the scene that aren't going to get booked by, and I will say this disclaimer, like I fully love these organizations, but like not going to be PDX Jazz, not going to be at the Montevilla Jazz Festival, not going to be, you know, supported by blah, 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 like sort of niche artists that sort of run their own path. And it started to sort of like break into the European scene and getting like European musicians to come and pay for their expenses, which is not easy. And then there was a couple different artistic directors that sort of started to bring some new things in. Jonathan Seeloff sort of ushered in some more, I would say, like national artists that he was checking out. And then Ben Cates, who's great saxophonist, he sort of ushered in a new idea of supporting the local artists. And him and John Niekratz, great drummer, started this thing called the Outset Series. And then, excuse me, since then, when I was asked to be the artistic director, 2016, I've sort of did my best and still am to this day of sort of like combining all those efforts together and continuing sort of like tradition of the experimental ists, and also sort of like the new like visual artists and like sculpturists, filmmakers, merging like all this interdisciplinary work in one stage. Then also sort of really dialing in on, especially this past year, of the local series and finding funding to support like one artist who's up and coming per se, and give them like 4 gigs for the month. Yeah. And pairing them with like maybe some people that are coming through town. And it's been very, very eyes wide open at every show for me as the artistic director, because I will see artists sort of like develop new things in different ways or try things in different ways, and then I'll see collaborations happen that I would never expect. Being it a visiting artist or not, but the end all be all is it's not easy to run excuse me, a nonprofit organization in so many ways. I do it fully as a volunteer. I very rarely take money from performing, which I will do when I will perform, like if usually like an artist asks me to do open up or something, or I feel like it's fit for a group that I'm in. But it's not easy. I mean, the amounts of money you would imagine to really fund an organization like this.
Oh, it's a lot.
It should be like somewhere around $100,000 a year, but finding that amounts of money is nearly impossible. We're like always sort of like on the borderline of going into, you know, this sort of like not exactly debt, but like below where I ever wanted to go.
Yeah.
So we're gonna have a big fundraiser in July and continue to look for people to support it and to go to our shows. Like we've put on, like last year, we probably put around like 40 to 50 shows.
Oh, wow.
An entire year.
Wow.
Including our festival, which is 2+ weeks long.
Oh, geez.
And a show every night, if not a couple.
Wow.
Sometimes.
You're definitely doing some huge things. How did you come across becoming the creative director?
Well, I moved from New York. I lived in New York for 10 years, and I myself had a weekly gig at this place called Bar 4. And I sort of always been sort of curating things in different ways, putting shows together. And when I came to town, the previous artistic director was taking a different job and was just down to pass the torch. And he just flat out asked me at a show and sort of knew my experience doing the various things I did and thought I would be a good person to do that. And I said yes. I was very humbled when I was asked to, because I've always respected this organization since I moved to town. And I dig that they're, and I will say me and them, I don't know if there's an actual term for that, probably in a different language, me and them. Us. Us is the best way to say it. Us. But to continue sort of like breaking the boundaries down and finding new territory, whether it's sonic or visual or combining it all.
Well, that's exciting. And I mean, I can imagine that getting an offer like that would just be like, you know, want something you couldn't refuse. But like, that's really cool that he would think of you for that.
I mean, yeah, it's a lot of work. I spend like, you know, on top of the various other things I do, tons of time doing the booking and doing, I mean, I have some support from the organization, of course, like it's not just me, but the most challenging thing is honestly, getting the funding for artists that want to come to town and finding hotel rooms and like travel money or like, hey, I need a slice of pizza. And like, pizza's like $7 now. So a slice.
That's the truth. Yeah, no, but I mean, it's cool that you're able to do that, especially with everything else that you're involved in. Like, it feels like, you know, you have enough full-time jobs, and that sounds like a full-time job, but it sounds like it's something that, you know, it's cool that it's something that you can do that makes a difference for a lot of people. It sounds like.
Yeah, I mean, that's what really makes it so special to me specifically, is like seeing artists like meet people or like share the bill with people that they really respect, or create their own thing, and like to see them develop as an artist and their personality just like so vibrant and coming out like every moment. Because that's what's special about improvised music is, like you said, when you're listening to the 2-0 album, there's not like one moment where you feel like you can expect what's happening next, or ideally there's not one moment that sort of bores you. That being said, there's, you know, all types of music. There's like some like radical noise artists that want to bore you, and that's like the part of it that makes sense. They want to frustrate your earlobes, and I dig that too.
Yeah.
It's a different approach.
Yeah. Now, were you already teaching at the school at the time?
Long story short, I basically came to Oregon from New York to teach.
Okay, so like that was your reason for
that was the reason we're coming. Yeah, and I really thought it was going to be like a small 9-month job, because I was like sort of like there because another person got sick, and it was sort of like this random last minute call. This person reached out to all these colleagues, and they put the post up online, and I just applied for it without even. Like I went to Portland once in like 2005.
I thought you were going to be like, oh, I thought it was Portland in the other side of the country.
Well, I've been to Portland, Maine too, a bunch too, of course. But yeah, definitely lived in a small cabin outside of Corvallis for 9 months and then got hired again for the next year and immediately moved to Portland because my wife and I wanted to continue living in a city. But yeah.
Okay. Oh, and I was going to ask, is your wife involved in the guild as well?
No, she has done shows for the Creative Music Guild as a filmmaker, but also as a performer. Mm-hmm. She's a bassist and a guitarist and sort of like a sonic arts person in a lot of ways and a great filmmaker as well. But she helps run this amazing production studio called Desert Island Studios.
Oh, okay.
And Desert Island is based in Portland. Her, this person DJ and these another couple, as in Devin and I being a couple, they are also a couple. Joe Bowden and Ashley Song run it, and they're doing such amazing stuff. I definitely have to recommend you interview one of those people.
Yeah, no, I've heard of them before, so I will reach out. Thank you for that.
Yeah, absolutely.
But with that being said, we're going to move into the last question we have for this middle portion.
Oh, cool.
And this is probably the densest question in the interview. But we've talked a lot about your experience with music, the actions, the reactions. But when it's
a bit of tea before this question, maybe a little meditation. No,
but when it's just you and the music, one-on-one. What does music give back to you?
It definitely, I would say, you do a number of things. When I'm performing, I sort of get lost in the moment. Mm-hmm. And it could be something where all of a sudden nostalgia comes. All of a sudden, sort of like a glimpse of the future comes. Mm-hmm. And then sometimes it's right in the moment where I see like some like wink from an audience member or something that like just gets me and sort of like ruffles my feathers in a good way or a bad way sometimes. But music really does keep me alive in so many ways because it kind of piques my interest in terms of whether it's harmony, whether it's instrumentation, whether it's collaboration or rhythm in terms of like its complexity. Like it always sort of keeps me interested. And I'm saying like from a standpoint of being a performer, but also like walking on the street in like New York City and seeing like a street performer. Like that's one of my favorite things.
Yeah.
Is like getting the energy from seeing music play, as well as performing, like sort of having that feeling that like all your neurons are sort of getting worked on or getting their specific sonic massage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very individually stimulating in its own ways.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Also, I will say, having been to New York a very, very, very small amount of times, there is definitely a performance element in New York that I don't think anywhere else has.
Yeah. And it's found on everyone, not just musicians.
Yeah.
You walk to a deli and it's a performative,
very
as in not performative, as in like banking on performativity is just naturally.
Yeah, there's a lot of personality and like not shyfulness of being strong in your culture in New York.
Yeah, I love it so much, and I love how diverse and how continually vibrant it is. Yeah, of course, gentrification has ruined a lot of places in the States, but it's still there's still neighborhoods that are still alive and still like they were 30 or so years ago.
Very much so. But not to run away from the total of your answer, and thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
But now let's go ahead and let's move on to some hypothetical questions.
Ooh.
And for these, sky's the limits. The questions are all made up, so the answers are allowed to be as well.
I like this already.
Yes. But this first one is pretty straightforward.
Okay.
If you could work with any one person, the only requirement is they have to be alive.
Ooh.
Who would you want to work with, and how would you want to work with them?
That is a wonderful question. I'd like to work with Tom Jenkinson. Tom Jenkinson is also known as Square Pusher. I think he's only like 10 or so years older than me. I don't know how to find him in any way, although I was very close to seeing Square Pusher in some small boat along the River Thames, I don't know River Thames, whatever it is. But it was a funny moment where it was totally sold out and he came out and like there was some crazy spider, I remember, like crawling and
oh no.
And for what it was worth, like he like brought in some people or friends and then the boat just took off. It was something where my friend Tom Mason and I, this great bass player in England, we're trying to check him out. So it was close to actually meeting this person, but I really dig his approach in so many ways. And I've always listened to his music and I feel like it could happen at some point.
Yeah.
And in whatever confines it would be, it could be just hanging out and just talking. It could actually be playing music, which would be cool too.
Yeah. Man, Square Pusher is a name I haven't heard in a long time. That's a cool one to just get back in the ear. I'm gonna go back to their music after this.
Definitely, yeah.
And then subsequently, and this one might be a little harder to answer, but who is a local artist that you're aware of that you haven't gotten to connect with yet, but you would like to?
That's a great question as well. I feel like I've done my best to reach the people that I really want to connect with, but one person that I haven't completely really gotten down with, I've only made a couple recordings with, is Omari Jazz. Omari Jazz has been producing and doing so many amazing things, and I really feel connected with that person on so many levels, including like joking around about the gentleman his name is Billy Grippo, and he's on all these posters around town as the top East Side producer. But he's a realtor, so we have this like going joke that like we can never get to Billy Grippo's standards. It's going to take us like decades. But sense of humor also, something that I dig.
No, I love that.
I want to meet sense of humor if you know that person.
Yes, yeah. Hey, and you know what, everybody? At both of them in the comments. Let's see if we can make it happen. And then for this next one, like I said before, sky's the limits, but it's pretty literal in this sense. If you could perform anywhere in the world and you wouldn't have to worry about crowd access or building stability or power, it was guaranteed the best lineup, guaranteed the best show, and it doesn't have to be a venue. It can be anywhere. Where would you like to perform?
I would like to perform like in the middle of some volcano, like Haleakala, like in Maui or something, like where it's really challenging to get there with your gear, and it's very absolute low key and respectful of who has inhabited that space originally. That's just thinking on the top of my head.
Hell yeah. I mean, that's definitely an abstract place to get to. I feel like helicopter would probably be the most effective, but
probably
we can figure out the logistics after.
Maybe a longboard, but maybe not.
Oh yeah, there you go. And then to wrap up the hypothetical question, if you could get one more album from anybody, they could be alive, they could be dead, they could have not put out an album in 100 years, they could have put out an album yesterday. Who would you like an album from?
Wait, they can be dead?
In this sense, it can be anybody.
I would say I would like to hear one of my favorite guitarists is this guy, Lenny Barreau. Lenny Barreau is or at least he grew up in sort of like the folk esque era. His parents were all folk musicians, and then he got into jazz, and he had this wild way of playing chords where he would do these harmonics 12 frets away and intersperse them with actually fretted notes and come up with these cool clusters. I would love to see that person recreate an album that was already done in a new way. And that album is called The Hallmark Sessions. And it's with all people, Levon Helm and Rick Danko from the band. So if all those people, and I think Rick just passed away recently, if all those people could get get out of their graves and record a new album, I'd pay for that. I'd pay $1 million for that.
Oh, damn.
Yeah.
Well, if anybody's got anything cooking, no. But
yeah, any ways of like summoning the dead?
Yeah.
Yeah, let me know in the comments. I have my ways, but they never work.
Yeah, I think the jury's still out on research for that kind of stuff. but that is awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, sure.
But with that being said, we're going to go ahead and start wrapping this up.
Sure.
What can we look forward to between now and the end of the year?
I'm going to be putting out a bunch of great records. One of them in particularly is with the cello player that turned my whole game around in high school, because I was playing upright bass in orchestra and I ended up switching to cello because of this person. Lori Goldston is her name, and she's known for some of the most like wild solo cello shows that I've ever heard in my life. And she's of course known for playing cello on Nirvana Unplugged and playing with her orchestra called Black Cat Orchestra. And with this great band, which is why I met her, is this band called Earth, which is like the original sort of doom metal heads. I'm excited about that record. It's a duo record we did. I'm also excited about the festival that the Creative Music Guild is putting on the last 2 weeks of October. We have some really exciting visiting artists, including Brandon Seabrook, who's great, Jenny Scheinman, who plays a bunch with Bill Frisell, and the list goes on and on. Also, I'm going to be putting out the next In Betweens record in the fall, as well as the next Twans record, and then a number of different improvised records on my record label. And also, I'm putting out a duo record with this great drummer, Jason Nazary, and we're going to do a small record release show in the East Coast when I'm going to be on tour in September. So, yeah, I would say those are the things I'm looking forward to. Also, I'm looking forward to just going out to live shows in Portland, because the vibrant music scene is fully there, and it's in front of my eyes. I love it. Yeah, very much so. Well, definitely looking forward to all of that. Cool. For this next one, go and look straight at the camera. Tell everybody how they can find you. Which camera? You can find me at, I would say my Linktree is the best way to find me, which is just Mike Gamble at Linktree. And my Instagram profile is so ridiculous. It's kind of goes with my sense of humor, but it's Instagams. It's Insta, GAMBZ. And that's the best way to find me. Or, I walk a lot in Portland. You could probably find me on the streets. I bike sometimes. And I snowboard every week at Mount Hood Meadows. So that's where you can find me. Oh, yeah. And then any other plugs, any other shout outs, anybody else you'd like to put on while you're on here? Oh, geez. Wow. But you already listed plenty of people. I listed plenty of people, but other people I'm thinking of, there's a great noise and also just sonic arranger of various modes that used to go by Evola. Veronica is their name, but now they're going by Trigger Object. I would recommend Trigger Object. I'd also recommend the filmmakers that I mentioned before, Devin Fabriello, Joe Bowden, Ashley Song, DJ Giuliano. And as far as other artists, there's a slew of different improvisers that are so amazing, that also merge into the singer-songwriter perspective. Andrew Jones is one of those. Ayal, that goes by Saroon, is one of those. I would say Alexis Mahler is also one of those people. Geez, how much time do I have? As long as you'd like. No, it's okay. I would say definitely recommend Omari Jazz too as well. And I'd also recommend, let me see, the studio mate that I have, Ryan Oxford, who's a great singer-songwriter and an amazing producer and engineer. Oh, yeah. Well, that's plenty of shout outs there. And I'm sure anybody that did get missed,
know that it wasn't intentional.
Never intentional.
No. But with that being said, we've got one last question to go.
Okay.
Before we do, I'm going to steal the camera for just a second.
Okay, sure.
As always, y'all, please make sure to like, subscribe, push all the buttons, do all the things. I don't know where they are, but you do, and I trust you. And one more shout out to the Brothers Apothecary and Ronald Records. Make sure to click the link below and check them out. Guarantee you're going to like them. With that being said, the final question. This is entirely up to your interpretation.
Okay.
But what is an album you feel is more on the obscure side? So it's a deep cut. It's one not a lot of people would know, but it's one you think everybody should know.
Obscure side. It's tough to say because it's probably not that obscure, but Portishead the Rip. That's the song. And I think it's also the album. That album specifically really sort of gets to me in sort of semi-obscure.
Man, that I don't know if I know that or not. And you've name dropped so many names that I'm like not familiar with. I'm super excited to go back to this episode and just like write a bunch of them down. So I'm super excited.
That one is really special. I'll also say Tondai Braxton is another person I'd like to mention. Their work just as a solo artist is all amazing. All of their albums are amazing. They used to work with this band called Battles in Brooklyn, who was sharing like the next door neighbor rehearsal space to me, and really cool band to check out too. But I would say Tondai Braxton, all of his work is amazing.
Hell yeah. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
With that being said, we're going to go ahead and get up on out of here. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Yeah.
This is a wonderful place, and I love the whole aesthetic here. It's beautiful, and I want to know about Ronald Records.
Yes, I'll tell you after we get off camera.
That's great alliteration.
Yeah, very much.
And also
Jimmy's Jambox is a big fan of alliteration.
All right.
All right. Well, thank you so much.
Thanks, Jimmy.
And this has been another exciting episode of Jimmy's Jambox. I'm Jimmy.
I'm Mike.
And we're signing off. Later, y'all.
That's a wrap.
This is not a podcast. This is a show.
Keep jamming.